Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq. Joining us is Quinn, Chief Financial Officer of Nasdaq-listed Cimpress, to discuss the benefits of going remote first, from financial savings to the increased work-life harmony. Sean, it's great to have you with us. Welcome to Trade Talks.
Jill, thanks a lot for having me.
Let's talk about the financial decision-making process before pivoting to remote first work.
Yeah, sure. So we, at Cimpress, I would say that we were on the earlier side of adopting a remote first approach. We took that decision back in August of 2020, which seemed at the time like a pretty nerve-wracking decision. It's kind of a one-way door once you go there. And I think the 2 years since then have kind of reconfirmed the reasons why we made that decision. As we thought about it, we collected a lot of data from team members around the world to try and understand what their experience was in the first 6 months of what we called, forced remote forced. And what we were seeing was really positive. Actually, engagement was quite high. There were a lot of stresses on people in that time, but what we were hearing is that team members could prioritize their well-being better. Engagement was up. And so we collected all that data and came to the decision that we should move in this direction, kind of on a permanent basis. As we thought about that financially, there's a number of things that we felt we needed to invest in order to make that successful for our team members and really continue to increase engagement and embrace remote first. And in order to do that, we were able to get savings elsewhere that we could reinvest to make that successful. The biggest source of those savings was, of course, in real estate. And we were pretty quickly able to free up about $8 or $9 million annualized that we could then reinvest in what we viewed as more productive investments in our team members to make sure that we kept engagement high, retention high, and we're able to attract and acquire great talent around the world.
Yeah, it's interesting because we know, of course, for companies, fixed costs such as the office buildings and of course, travel too, right, for employees to travel around. That's significant savings right there. So, Sean, how do you successfully reinvest your real estate savings into creating a world-class remote-first model? What do your employees need?
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a couple key areas. I mean, the first one was, I think anything that you do as a business, if it's going to be great, you need to have focused resources, waking up every day and thinking about it. And so the first thing was moving some really talented team members that we already had into roles that were focused on our remote first approach, and then also bringing new folks into the organization to help us there too, whether it be rethinking our whole onboarding process, making sure that our employer brand proposition appropriately represented our remote first approach, thinking about learning and development opportunities, because especially managers need to better understand how to lead teams in a remote environment. There's also the whole sort of technology infrastructure and making sure all of the tools that we use day to day were equipped for remote first. And so we made a number of investments there as well. From a benefits perspective, we couldn't just expect that all of a sudden people were going to set up at home and have an amazingly productive experience at home. And so we needed to make sure they had the tools they needed at home as well. So thinking about reimbursements for things like, appropriate Wi-Fi and equipment and so on. And then the last category is just benefits, and really taking a step back and thinking about our benefits and well-being approach, and introducing new things like, for example, subsidizing Peloton subscriptions or equipment, or things like making available headspace and other things to prioritize well-being, which kind of just had a different meaning given everyone was now working from home.
Yeah, we did that too, and it was fun taking advantage of some of the cool apps that we had access to. How do you weigh up financial successes against improvements to team member well-being? Was there any pushback at all? Perhaps people wanted to be in the office 5 days a week, or are you finding that the adjustment to whether it's hybrid or remote only, the transition was smooth?
I would say it was pretty smooth. Again, it was based on what we were hearing from team members already. But that doesn't mean it's for everyone. And so, there's definitely a small minority that we've tried to make sure that they're able to work in a way that's productive for them. And some people naturally will self-select out of that too. But I mean, in terms of evaluating performance and whether this has been good for us from a financial perspective and measuring business outcomes, our engagement scores are up 4 times since 2019, which is really meaningful. We have applications for new jobs, and we've been pretty active hiring, are up 300%. So that's a huge increase. And so we're seeing both from a retention standpoint, engagement scores, but then also our ability to attract new talent across all those dimensions. And we measure this very regularly. We see very positive outcomes. So for us, it's been, we can say it's been successful so far.
I think it's also a great way to build more diverse workforces because you're not so city-centric. I mean, you have diversity of thought there. And I mean, just from my own experience with team members all over the world, supporting this show, to get that diversity of thought and the creativity, I think that's been one of the silver linings to what we've learned through the pandemic.
There's no question, Jill. We measure that actually, and we have DEI commitments across the globe. Yeah, but if you just think about it, we were in the U.S. Fairly Boston-centric or kind of New England-centric, and now we're hiring, really agnostic to location anywhere in the U.S. And the same thing is represented in Europe and in Asia and elsewhere too. But we went very quickly from having team members in 9 states to having team members in 35 states. And that took about 18 months to get from 9 to 35. So you think about that in terms of as you say, the diversity of thought, but across all dimensions, our diversity has increased. And that's only the start. We can continue to do more. So the complexion of our workforce has really meaningfully changed over the last 2 years.
Yep, encouraging to hear, Sean. Appreciate the insight. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.